And now, since I mentioned it, we do have Gail Perry and Brian Bonde in the wings. So let me introduce them. Gail Perry, MBA, CFRE, is a nonprofit missionary and philanthropy expert. She's the leader of Gail Perry Associates Philanthropy Consultants, dedicated to helping nonprofits achieve transformational fundraising goals. Gail is an international keynote speaker, leading nonprofit expert, and author of Fired Up Fundraising, Turn Your Board's Passion into Action, recognized as the gold standard guide to building successful boards. And just to add a little bit, she's also a newlywed, so we'll have to congratulate her for that. I also want to introduce Brian Bonde, a CFRE of Advanced Certified Fundraising LLC. He's the immediate past chair of the AFP US Foundation and currently serves on this ACFRE certification board. He has raised over $150 million and was recognized with the AFP Award for Excellence in Fundraising and the AHP Showcase Award. Brian is an author and speaker, having presented at ICON since 1988, and now adding virtual to his resume. And he's also a very talented actor and singer, performing roles such as Jean Valjean in Les Miserables, and was the co-recipient, along with his wife, of the Charlotte Carver Award for Lifetime Achievement in the Arts. So welcome to Gail and Brian, and I hope you don't mind that I just edited your bios just a little bit.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
And I was watching Brian Bonde videos yesterday.
All right. There you go.
But thank you to you both, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Brian and I are so honored to be asked to speak at or present today at AFP ICON Virtual, and it's just going to be, I think, an interesting ride as we look at the current environment. What do you think, Brian?
Yes, I'm looking forward to a great conversation with Gail and a conversation with all of you who are part of AFP ICON. I want to do a couple shout outs, and I think the first one is to Alice Ferris. Thank you, Alice, for giving your time and energy and emceeing and helping us along with all of this. It's great that you're
Thank you, Brian.
And also, we want to give a shout out to all of our AFP leadership, Martha Shoemaker and particularly Mike Geiger, and the hardworking team who put this ICON Virtual together, and just like that. So we're deeply grateful for our leadership of AFP. And also, I want to just send warm wishes to our AFP community out around the world who are listening in today and watching our videos. We know it's a very tough time for many people, both personally and professionally, and who knows how other ways. So we're pleased and touched to be able to speak to you today.
Yes, I want to thank also all of the board members. We aren't able to meet in person for ICON, but all of your boards and all of your committees have been meeting the last couple of days, just like we would have if we were in Baltimore. And they've been doing great work. And so we've all been adapting to the current environment. And so have Gail and I. We've rewritten our presentation, 3 or 4 times, because you almost have to change it daily or by the minute as the world changes.
Yeah. And so our original title is Top 10 Challenges of Capital Campaigns and How to Correct Them or Address Them. But now we have a new subtitle, Realities for 2020, because as we have all mentioned, our current environment is uncertain. It's changing day to day. The stock market's going up and down. People are healthy, then they're not healthy. We don't know how long this is going to last. So I think it's very apropos, perhaps, that we address the capital campaign issues. Many of you may be in a capital campaign right now, and you're grappling with what to do next.
That's absolutely right. Let's go ahead and introduce ourselves just a little bit, Gail.
Yeah, and I am a newlywed. I'm so excited. That's why I couldn't go to the Women's Leadership Conference. But one of the things that is interesting just to share is that I have led, staffed, or coached or consulted over 50 capital campaigns. And so I have seen the good, the bad, the ugly. I've seen the painful. I've seen the great successful campaigns and everything in between. I've also been a colleague and friend just when people write me. So I've seen, we have an enormous amount of perspective and experience today to share with you.
That's right. I haven't had as many campaigns as Gail has had, but I've sure sat in a lot of seats. I've been vice president of a university. I've been with a social service agency, been a senior vice president at a large regional healthcare system, do a lot of work in the arts. And as Alice said, I'm the past chair of the AFP US Foundation, and I do want to do a little shout out. I want to thank Blackbaud. You should have one of these in your email this morning, and Blackbaud is going to be matching all gifts to the AFP's Foundations for Philanthropy. So take a look at your email and don't forget that, and don't forget the AFP Foundation.
Right, Brian, I saw that email in my inbox today, and I want to make sure I make a gift because it's going to be matched. And of course, the AFP Foundation funds scholarships for young fundraisers. Can you give us a quick rundown, Brian?
We do a lot of things. We do the Chamberlain Scholarships, the AFP Lead that happens in the fall. We do a lot of the support for research. And of course, we help with ICON. And we want to thank all those donors to the foundation, as well as all of the sponsors that are helping make all of this possible. I mean, they have been wonderful as we're trying to adjust to a new world, and they were very supportive of ICON Virtual.
Absolutely. So here we are in today's uncertain environment. We have a poll for you, and we'd like to know how you are feeling. We're all feeling many things right now, and we didn't have anxiety and impatience, or we ran out of things to put on this poll, but we want to take your temperature. How are you feeling about life, campaigns, your work? Is it challenging? And Alice, just let us know when we have enough feedback that we can take some feedback from our group of people who are listening. Brian, you want to comment on some of these topics that people are answering?
Yeah, how do we react to this? I live out in South Dakota. I live on the prairie, so I think I've thought about this situation we're in. It's almost like going down a country road and a train coming by, and all of a sudden you're at a dead stop. We have no idea how many cars there are on this train, but it doesn't mean that we can stop. Now, you hear about social distancing, but I like to call it physical distancing, because I think we need to be socially connected. And so we want to be the leaders. We want to be the calm voice. And it's important for you to take a little temperature of where you're at. So as we look at the poll right now, we see 58% of the people are worried. We see 27% things are getting tough. Only about 7% say there's no problems here. We've got I can't see how many things are falling apart there.
It's about 3%.
Okay. 3% of things are falling apart.
And then we've got 4% that are saying help, and we understand that too. I think we all have those periods of time, and I think it's important for us to be leaders. Take a deep breath, realize that we are leading our sector and we're leading our organization, sometimes from the middle, but sometimes we have to lead from the middle and be the calm voice that's going to move our organizations and our campaigns forward.
So let us all please take a deep breath.
Yes.
And imagine the voice. Gail and Brian are saying calm voice. You need to show up as a leader means that you show up calmly and say, let's create a plan. And again, it's hard to plan right now because the environment changes daily, but there is a long-term plan, and there's going to be a short-term tactical plan. And that's the best way to get through this situation.
That's right.
We have another poll. And Brian and I really want to know what stage of campaign you're in. So please go ahead and I'm going to touch base on some of these top areas here. You may be in the decision-making stage of a campaign where you're trying to figure out if it's go, no go, whether you are really are ready to undertake a large fundraising effort. You may be looking at plans for a new building. You may be engaging community leaders in informal conversations about some new iteration of your organization. There's a lot that goes on to this preliminary pre-campaign planning decision-making stage. And then you may be in a feasibility study. We have a client right now that's in a feasibility study, and Brian, you might as well. And they have a lot of work to do on their case and on their prospect list. So we are going to wait, and we're going to adopt a wait and see attitude toward when we start feasibility study interviews, because we want to make sure that the donors are in a good humor in order to be chatting with them about a potential campaign gift. Brian, you want to take the rest of them?
Yeah, it depends upon where you're at. I think all of us have various things going on in our lives, and this crisis hit. And so where are you at? Are you actively organizing the campaign? Are you making some strategic decisions? We go out of the feasibility stage and that question of what's our goal going to be, what's our working goal going to be. We move into that silent phase where we're doing major gifts, and then we go into the public phase. And as we go through our presentation today, we're going to take each one of these piece by piece, and we'll be having those conversations. And if you have any questions, you can ask us those. I think one of the things that was interesting that Alice and Martha were talking about, it because it'll come up a number of times today, and that is we need to put our donors first. That doesn't mean that we stop talking. We hear about maybe it's insensitive to be talking about philanthropy these days, but we can't make decisions for our donors, and we can't make decisions for our donors' pocketbooks. They still believe in us, and they're wondering what's going on, and we need to continue to talk about our organization. It may change the way we ask, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Yeah. But maybe you could give us a rundown on the poll.
Yeah, I can't quite see the poll results.
Yeah, could you give that to us, Alice?
Yes, so we had 36% are in decision-making stage, 24% were in silent phase, 17% were in public phase, and then the remaining was split between feasibility study and actively organizing the campaign.
So people are deep into capital campaigning right now, and I bless your heart, as we say in the South. So let's dive into what are we going to do given the current situation and your issues that are coming up with your board, with your donors, with your planning. And so planning is the first place we start, of course. And remember, I was listening to Martha Shoemaker before we went on, and Martha was talking about AFP's strategic plan, and the strategic plan is still there. You have made you have this vision for your organization's future.
That's right. Take a look at your organizational plan and where did you plan to be at this moment? Any campaign has to fit inside of what are the strategic plans that the organization has to move itself forward over the next period of years. But here we are in this environment. The train is in front of us, it's going by us on the road, and we have to adapt to this current situation. So not only do you need to look at where does the organization want to be strategically further down the road, what do we need to do and what do we need to keep in our minds as we're in this current situation? That means assessing. What do you need a month from now? What do you need 3 months from now? What do you need 6 months from now? What are your capital needs? What things can be deferred and what things do we have to take action on right now?
So probably there's an opportunity to reconfigure your plan. Your strategic goals should remain the same. Perhaps the timing is going to shift, and perhaps there are different financial issues that you will bring into the campaign. But I want to mention that we went through 5 stages of campaigns just in the previous poll, and there's a lot of internal work to be done that you can plug right ahead on, regardless of whether you're really at the stage to be in front of donors discussing campaign gifts. So we encourage you to don't hold back on your internal planning, right, Brian?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you need to take wherever you are in your campaign process means that you are going to have to take a stop and an assessment at that point. And what you do if you're in the middle of the silent major gift phase is going to be different than what you're going to do when you are in the public phase of the campaign. Yeah. But the main thing is that have you got yourself structured and organized right at the beginning? I think, Gail, you would agree that if you don't have things right in the beginning, you're going to have problems later.
This is true. In fact, I want to do a shout out for pre-campaign planning, appropriate planning, because that's when you line up all the dominoes and make sure that and get everybody enlisted, get everybody bought in, get everybody agreeing, lay the plans for the project, hire the staff, get your campaign brand and logo. There's so much to be done that when you are really ready to be in front of your and engaging and analyzing your donor base as well. So when you are ready to start asking, you're going to be in a far better position because you took extra time during this period to lay deeper groundwork and think things through more carefully and be more strategic. So I want to mention the whole notion of campaign objectives. And, some people call them funding objectives or campaign objectives. What is your campaign going to include? And I was just thinking, too, that I've been part of some arguments and some elbowing at organizations because various parts of the organization want to get their projects into the campaign objectives. And often you include annual fund, you include all sorts of revenues that are coming in from all parts, as long as they're not earned. And creating this list of campaign objectives and packaging the list in a way that is appealing to donors is very different. You might say, instead of scholarships, you might say scholarships for needy students or deserving students. There's the identification of the policy decisions of what's included in the campaign. And then there's the what we might call packaging of those objectives so that they are in a helpful framework that would be appealing to a donor.
That's right. I looked at that list in the poll, and a lot of you are trying to figure out, are we going to go or are we not going to go? This is one of the most important times right now, is to figure out. I'm always amazed when I sit down with a group when they're considering a capital campaign, and the simple questions are, what are you going to do? And what are you going to cost? What's it going to cost? And that may mean bringing in a number of other experts. You may need to bring an architect, you may bring contractors in, you may bring program experts, depending upon what your capital needs are. And you have to get those all down in line items so you know exactly where you're at. Now, that may shift. I've got one client who's in a bit of a crisis right now because they're going to hold off on their campaign, but the roof of their building is leaking. And so they're making some very quick adjustments to do a mini campaign just to solve that problem, hold off on the rest of the campaign for a little bit later. But it's all a matter of getting all of those very detailed things down so you know what it is, and then you package them up, like Gail said, and that's the numbers that you'll use in the case and the way you'll communicate your goals to your constituents.
And I would imagine that this conversation about campaign objectives may be difficult to have with your team internally and your board, because I think sometimes board members, especially in this situation, I'm hearing they're heading for the bunker, or they are just they're folding in and saying no thanks. And so it's really important for you to be a leader and remember that smile. We're looking at the long run, and no matter when we start the campaign, this work still needs to happen. And the thing about campaign objectives and the strategic plan is it's vision work. It's about possibility. And I feel like that when you are living in a space of vision and possibility, there's a lot of power, there's a lot of energy in these conversations. So
that's exactly right. Because our donors still believe in our mission. And what are we going to do to move that mission forward? We talk about the details and we talk about what numbers you need to come up with the objectives, but ultimately we want something that our donors are going to be excited about, that they're going to be inspired about. And I think especially in these times, if we're still talking about what we're going to do to change the world in the future to make it better, and then if we're also talking about what is our organization doing to help avert some of the issues that we have in this particular crisis, your donors are going to be interested in hearing that.
Yeah. And speaking of that, let's go to our next point, which is the case. And you might be in a situation where you really want to revise your case to include some current needs. If you are actively in front of donors or need to be in front of donors right now, and we highly recommend that you are in front of your key funders right now, because if you're not, I think you're missing a very important relationship development opportunity.
I think that's right.
You may want to revise your case because your donors want to know what's happening right now. Even if you are not in the healthcare field and you're not a safety net organization, say you're an arts organization, which is and the performing arts organizations are having terrible financial crises right now because they exist largely on earned income. And if the ticket sales are not there, poof, there goes the revenue for the season. So you're going to have to be doing what we call a tap dance shuffle to reorganize your immediate picture in front of your donors and your long-term picture in front of your donors.
We're not going to go into the details of how you put together a case. There are a lot of resources for you to do that. I mean, we talk about the history, we talk about the need of the organization, we talk about the solution, we talk about the plan. Just remember to be forward thinking. Remember that your donors are still interested in the future. We see so many case statements where people spend a lot of time talking about what happened in the 1880s when the organization was started. When your donor is most interested in what is your vision, especially coming out of this situation, we need to be creative and talk about where we're moving ahead as much as any past history we have, more so than the history.
Even if you are revising your case, you probably have maybe 1 or 2 page vision statement, I hope, and then a more lengthy case for support. Remember, and this is a challenge for people because they don't quite know how to put the case together, the plan and the vision needs to be at the front part of the case. It should not, Brian and I were talking, and Brian said to me, I can't imagine how many organizations I've ever run into that say, in 1856, our organization, blah, blah, blah. And I've seen one of our clients right now, the poor staff spent version after version after version after version of their vision statement, which was all about their past and their accomplishments and almost nothing about the plan.
That's right. And I think you have to take the plan you had or the plan that you were thinking of working on for the capital campaign, and then you have to place it in this current environment. You have to look at what needs are arising now. And I think you talk about arts organizations or those organizations that rely on earned income where you have to gather people. Well, that's going to be one of the tragedies, I think, of this crisis is some of those organizations aren't capitalized or they don't have money available. But this is the place where you need to be creative as to what do we need now and what can we be talking to our major gift donors about that might be able to help us get through the crisis so that we can be there with our mission when this is over.
No, and I am all for taking the case draft, and maybe especially this might be an opportunity for you if you're revising your case. Take what your revision, what you're working on, and float it out in front of a couple of funders for their feedback. I'm very big on asking for advice and input from my key funders, because if they are part of the plan that you're creating, if they help craft the plan, they're far more bought into it, and you are aligned with them as you go forward in what is going to be important to them. So maybe throwing your case up in the air and reconfiguring it right now, and it gives you an excuse to go see some of your donors and ask for feedback. And it gives you the opportunity to engage them in the work of visioning and the work of possibility, right? So it's not, there's a silver lining here. There are a lot of silver linings.
Well, and I think the opportunity for us to be talking with our major gift prospects is an opportunity in this particular time. If you've done an assessment of where you're at, you look at what your campaign's doing, your constituents who, especially those who have been donors, and many of our major gift donors are long-time relationships, they're very interested in what's going on with the organization. So give them a call.
Yeah,
the first thing you say, of course, is, how are you doing? And then explain where you're at. Go ahead, Gail. I'm sorry.
Thank you for tweeting. The tweets are popping up on my phone, so I'm keeping our time on our phone. And so my Twitter handle is @GailPerryNC, and Brian is Brian Bonde, right, Brian?
That's right. Speaking of that, we're about 20 minutes in. We don't see the questions. Alice, are there any questions that we should touch on before we move into our next part of the presentation?
Well, there's a couple here. Let me take a look.
Well, you take a look at that, and we will continue on to the next slide. How about that, Gail?
Okay.
And you can get those ready for yourselves.
And this is a topic that Brian and I have a lot of energy about, because we're consultants, and we've consulting. I've been consulting and leading capital campaigns for 20 years. Oh boy, maybe longer. And I have seen organizations use a set of criteria to hiring a consultant that may not be the best criteria for an organization to use. So we want to offer you our perspective as consultants about what you really need to look for. And I was thinking too about this earlier today, that your relationship with your consultant is a very intimate one. You're going to get to know them very well, and they're going to get to know you very well. So the issue of trust and a personal relationship that is warm and friendly is going to be, it's going to serve you so well. Because I've had situations where board members sort of railroaded in a consultant that they liked because they had worked with them before, but the staff did not have a relationship and wasn't familiar with this agency or this person or this team. Mm-hmm. So make sure that the staff has input. And I've been known to, once I was a board member and I sat on an interview team to interview consultants. And there was only one guy who was absolutely truthful to us who were interviewing him about what the situation really was. And I railroaded him in to be the consultant because I felt like we needed honesty out of our consultant, because this was a startup project that was going to require a different kind of strategy. So look for honesty, look for trust.
So I do have a couple questions in Slido. One is from Melanie, who asks, regarding focusing on the future and not spending too much time on the organization's history, is it fair to say that it's beneficial to recap how past support has helped, such as your past gift has allowed us to pass support from donors like you have enabled us to?
Well, I'll take that one. You can do a little bit of it, but it's the case statement is all about your plan and your vision. And remember, donors want to give, they don't want to give to the status quo. They want to give to something new and exciting. So this is a marketing piece. This is a sales document. This has got razzle dazzle to it. So yeah, thank you so much for you put that in the cover letter, maybe acknowledging all the support of our community. But again, it's the wrong direction in the road to really spend a lot of time and energy on. Great question.
That brings another thought to mind, and that is, in this situation, is to, when you're putting your case together and when you're putting it together as a communication piece to share with your donors, you need to be doing that in a vehicle that's as flexible as it can be. You shouldn't be printing up 40,000 four-color booklets right now. I mean, you should have something that is very customizable, that can be changed, especially when you're still working with working objectives. But I think in the case of this question too, is you're talking about a very specific communication to a specific donor, and any gratitude and any recognition you can give to their past donations is helpful.
I mean, we're seeing some donor solicitation asks set up the case is very customized. There may be a PowerPoint or a slideshow that takes the donor through their journey with the organization and builds the case for their investment. There's a lot of technology happening in using all sorts of strategies to create a different kind of case. I love the idea of customizing it for each donor.
Right. Anything else that you have for us, Alice?
I'm going to touch on one other question before you move on, which is from Diane, who said, for those of us confronting the go, no-go decision point, what factors would tip an organization towards going forward?
I would be my major donors. And I would be talking to them honestly about whether they're bought in or not at this point.
Yeah, in this particular environment, I'm hearing so many people making decisions for their donors without that information. And like in any situation, we need to talk to our donors. Even it's not unseemly to be having these conversations. It's important to find out what your donors think and not make assumptions as to what they think. And then, of course, you got to bring your board into it. It's like any campaign. It's top down and inside out is the communication. So that who are your very best former prospects that you can be talking to, and be sure and be talking to your boards and committees so that you've got as much information to help them make the decision on a go, no-go decision.
And, you know, I know there are a lot of people from smaller organizations here who don't have a lot of major gift fundraising experience, yet they're still interested in planning a campaign, which is perfectly appropriate. I've mounted very successful campaigns for organizations that did not have the major donors ready to go. But these organizations, you don't let your board members hold you back. If your board members are inexperienced or uncomfortable about this initiative, they may be putting the go, no-go decision instead of the key donors that you have. And remember, this is a very long-run effort. This is a capital campaign is a multi-year effort. We don't know what the world's going to be like in 6 months. So I would not be at a place of go, no-go right now. My strategy would be to delay the vote and take a wait and see perspective, because we don't know how things are going, and the tide may turn nicely and the coast may be completely clear. What do you think, Brian?
That brings us back to the consultant question, because I think, I work with large organizations, $175 million campaigns, but most of my organizations are small, $500,000, $1 million campaigns to $10, $15 million campaigns. one of the most important reasons to bring a consultant on, especially if you're not a large healthcare organization or a university who does a lot of campaigns, is this is often for the organizations I work with. This is a campaign is a once in a lifetime decision. It's a once in a lifetime process, and just like in other areas of our lives where we're not experts, whether it's an attorney or a CPA or anything else like that, you want someone who's been through it, knows the steps, so you don't have to make the mistakes yourself, and they can guide you around those landmines for a successful campaign.
And a consultant is really good with your board, because if your board trusts the consultant as an expert, as an authority, as a friend, as a trusted advisor, then your board is going to listen to the consultant and not run off making probably bad decisions just because of a current state of the stock market or the environment right now.
Right. That's one of the things that's on our slide. That's sort of one of my pet peeves, is that if you hire an expert, take advantage of what they're telling you. I see people hire consultants all the time and then not take their advice and then trip up. Now, that's assuming that you've made the right decision. First of all, of someone with some expertise. Second of all, that the chemistry is good between you and the consultant and the board.
Mm-hmm. I want to tell you a war story. Once I was working with a maritime project down on the coast of North Carolina, and they wanted to go their own way with a different kind of capital campaign strategy than I knew would work. So we were at odds in terms of what was the appropriate path forward. And I would go down to the beach, and we would have a big meeting, and we'd get everybody lined up, and they're all agreeing about who's going to do what when, and this is the process. And then I'd be coming back back to my office in Raleigh, and I'd get a phone call saying, we've decided we don't want to do it that way. So at that point, I called in a business coach who's an organizational development guru, and I had him teach me organizational development skills so that I could learn how to facilitate board decisions and sort of get inside their head so that they feel like they came up with the ideas rather than me. So there are a lot of intangible qualities that a smart consultant can bring to your project and to your team that maybe are a little bit outside of the traditional capital campaign methodologies. And I also want to say regarding methodologies, Brian, you'll agree with me that we're seeing an awful lot of consultants roll out these cookie cutter campaigns. And the feasibility studies look exactly the same. The reports look exactly
right. It's important. I'm sorry if the video froze there for a second. Yeah, I have on my website, I have cookies, and say it's not cookie cutter. And there are best practices that we follow. All of us who are certified and have worked in this, we know what those best practices are, but they have to be applied individually to each organization. And your consultant should be thinking very deeply about how is your situation different, and they have been through the minefields, and they know some of the answers and can help you with that. And make sure that they do, especially in this relationship, I think, with the board. Sometimes board members have had different experiences in business and running a capital campaign, and your consultant can help the communication with your board.
Mm-hmm. So we'll let that go, although we could probably talk an hour about how to get the most out of your consultant. Maybe that's another session. But what if you're in a feasibility study right now? What do you think, Brian?
Well, as we're going through the session, we're talking about the campaign in the same chronological order. And you might be in a feasibility study right now. You may have just completed one, or you may be just moving into one. And things are changing rapidly. If you did a feasibility study 2 months ago, the answers that you had may be different today. And once again, one of those most important things for you to be talking to your donors. And it's a time to adapt. And if you are about to start a feasibility study, this may be the time to put the study on hold and continue working on some of the other things that you can work on right now, like the case or doing evaluation or some of the other things that you can be doing and, of course, cultivating.
Yeah, we're as I said, I have a client right now, and we're embarking on the feasibility study process. And I mentioned earlier that we'll probably delay the interviews. We're going to take a wait and see approach. However, they have a lot of work to do to really take their plan for expanding their organization and romancing it and getting the details down and getting the quotes. And you, I mean, everybody's listening has been through that process. It can take months to get the information you need to really create a solid plan to roll out it publicly. And you have the opportunity at this point, as I said earlier, to be in front of your major donors. And I'm going to tell you another quick war story. I was the lead on a capital campaign feasibility study for a small college in Eastern North Carolina. It was Mount Olive College in a very rural and agricultural part of the state. And this was a church college that did not have major donors on its board. They had preachers, and they did not have a major donor program. However, they were an economic powerhouse for that region of the state, and they were highly respected and treasured by the various communities that they served. What happened was the college suddenly got put on probation by the accreditation agency for financial issues. And there we were. We just completed a feasibility study, and we were trying to figure. And we get this terrible news that's on the front page of the local paper. So what did we do? We put it on hold, and we did not crumple. We did not. We were not embarrassed. We said we're going to solve this problem. Not a big deal. We're going to go forward when the time is right. And we spent a year, because we had extra time on our hands. We spent a year in listening every important business leader and social leader and government leader in that entire section of the state. And since this was an agricultural area, we had the largest turkey producers in the world. We had a huge tobacco warehouser. We had oil distributors. You may be in a rural area, and there's still a lot of business. It got to the point where every other business leader in the community wanted to be on the campaign cabinet. So that's like a perfect situation. So when we were really ready to go forward with the campaign, we had been talking privately with our lead donors about when they were ready to really just make a decision and announce their lead gifts. I want to tell you the happy ending to this story. And Brian, you haven't heard this part, but when I do a capital campaign, I usually set it all up, and at some point we'll just turn it over to the staff and let them run with it, because the lead work for a consultant is at the beginning, the first half of the campaign. So I turned it over to them, and I went on my way, but I stayed in touch. And then years later, at an AFP meeting, I ran into the vice president for advancement of that little college, and he said, "Oh, you're Gail Perry." And he said, that campaign, instead of raising $21 million, it raised $28 million. And he said, we are still reaping the benefits of that campaign today. And those words resonate. We're still reaping the benefits of that campaign today. So just know that if you have to slow down and do more groundwork and enlisting and engaging, it takes a lot of work. And it's fun to be out in front of donors, just getting to know them and finding out how they feel about your work and your organization and your vision. This is hard work. It's fun work. You can keep right on doing that and then start the fundraising when you're ready.
Don't assume that you can't be in front of your donors right now either. I mean, it may be different. We're not going to be able to go to the cafe. We're not going to be able to go to the restaurant and go to their businesses and meet with them. But we're having ICON virtual. You can have fundraising virtual. You can get on the phone. You can do FaceTime. You can do all of the different ways that we connect via video, because this is a unique time. This is not only a situation with health issues, but it's also a situation with economic issues. I have a client who just had some very nice 5-figure gifts lined up for his campaign, and he was having conversations with his donor last week, and the donor said, "I'm still with you. I'm going to make the gifts, but the gifts I was going to make at the end of March, I'm probably going to make a little bit later in the year." And so they're still planning on it. He's still planning on it, but he's going to make some adjustments just because of the health and economic realities of the situation we're in.
And we're helping a local arts center with a $4 million campaign. Maybe 5. We're hoping we still have a working goal, which Brian and I will talk about in a minute. And we had a lead gift solicitation lined up 3 weeks ago. And it was just when the economy in the U.S. started really quaking. I think on Friday, the stock market had its first major drop. And this was the perfect donor for the lead gift. It was $1 million ask. They were bought in. They had funded the campaign. They had made an early planning gift to the campaign. They knew that they were one of the few sources we could get that very large lead gift. And we were everything. They were the perfect prospect. It was the perfect ask, but the timing was not right. And so we had the appointment scheduled regardless of what was happening. And so we went and talked to him and said, we're still with you, but it's not the right time. Not the right time.
So in those occasions, you don't stop the relationship. You continue the relationship, and the right time will come up.
Yeah. And so I'm checking our time. I think we're just on time. I think we can go a little bit more deeply into these next slides, Brian, because
right.
we're not. Should we stop and see if there are any more questions?
That might
Alice?
be good.
Alice, do you want to see if there are any questions? I would think
Sure
people
thing.
would be. Yeah.
So how about this one? This is from Rachel. For those of us who are actively fundraising for a capital campaign, can you touch on virtual meetings and how we might structure them to be as productive as possible?
I certainly can. Brian, do you want to take that one first?
Well, there's lots of different levels of that. I had, in fact, on Friday, I had one of my clients who is in a capital campaign right now. It's a public broadcasting system, and they had a town hall for all of their campaign leaders, the steering committee, and all of their leadership volunteers, and they just went step by step through what's happening with them right now. I think you can do that by committee, you can do it by groups, and I think if you don't have some way to set up a Zoom call or all the different ways of doing it, Microsoft or Teams, or whether it's Skype or whatever it is, I think there are lots of ways to do that. I was on the phone yesterday afternoon with a client, and I said, how about if we Zoom? Because I just as soon see you as opposed to just talk to you on the phone. But there's lots of alternatives, and whatever works. You may have to do some little education. I had a group of clients where we actually had to go step by step with an older woman who was on the committee, who had barely used her cell phone, let alone use video. And once she got onto it, now she's doing it with her family too. So she sees that connection with the nonprofit organization.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of new technology skills developing very rapidly among people who have been throwing up their hands and saying, not me. So it's sort of hard. That's another silver lining, that we're all getting better at the technology, wouldn't you say? And we are learning how to communicate and connect virtually because that's all we have. I signed up for a dance class online, and my husband and I did a yoga class virtually this morning since we couldn't go actively to our session to see our teacher. However, we do have a campaign group, a board, a campaign planning committee for a feasibility study and a campaign in Knoxville, Tennessee, and half of the board has said, or half of this committee has said, we're not doing the technology. We're just not going to do it. So we're working on that. I think you have to have some creative approaches. Personally,
it needs to be simple. That's one of the things about, I've been on a couple things this week. Well, in fact, a birthday party on Wednesday night. One of my former coworkers had a birthday party, and they did it via Zoom. And there were a number of people on there going, I didn't know this was so easy. I would have done this earlier. So you can help people through that process.
Yeah. Great question.
Awesome.
Great.
Other questions, Alice?
Let me give you one more.
I want to say one thing, Alice, before you go, is that I think managing a virtual meeting is an art.
Yes,
and you be careful about it, because you've got to have a very powerful facilitator. You've got to have very clear objectives for the meeting. Are you going to have people on camera or not? If people are not paying attention and they're on camera, it's debilitating. So ground rules for effective virtual meetings are going to be key.
It is. It's a real skill. There are webinars and things out there right now by the companies. I'll give a nice shout out to Martha Schumacher. Yesterday we had the AFP board meeting, and I don't know, I think we maybe had 30 or 40 people on, and she did a wonderful job of calling out people. Some we have introverts and extroverts, and even more so on video, you don't want people to simply be able to control it. And I think being able to be a strong leader is very important. So get yourself some education on how to run those video meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So I'm going to give you one more question from Chandler,
Yeah.
Okay.
who said, we have a proposal for a significant gift in front of a philanthropist. Do you have ideas on how to balance communication about transformational gift with short-term operating needs?
Oh, one of the
That's good.
issues is, yeah, it's a huge question. One of the issues is the gift is always based on the donor's timing, not yours or your organization's. So that is paramount. Just like another rule of this whole game is never make assumptions for your donors.
Right.
So you are in a situation where you may not know what the donor is thinking. Gosh, I don't know, Brian. I think I would go have an honest talk with them. And we know you. We've been in conversations with you about a major transformational gift. How are you feeling?
Mm-hmm. I think that's the question. The first question is, how are you feeling? Get their reflections, and then put in the context of where you're at. We have to be transparent in the situation. Everybody knows that we are in the age of the coronavirus, and you have to acknowledge that. And if you have issues currently, you're going to have to be transparent about that, and they may want to help. If you have staffing issues, if you have capitalization issues, if you have cash flow issues, there may be, you have to be careful about that, but there may be a time to put that into the conversation. And if somebody loves your organization and what is happening may have a significant impact on your ability for your organization to fulfill its mission, don't forget to talk about that to those, especially those major and transformational gift donors. They can make the difference as to how your organization survives in the future.
And one of the things you have to remember about your major donors, and this is also relevant when board members are saying, oh, we've got to back off. These major donors and funders of your organization love you. And they are partners with you in your mission and your work, and they're passionate about your work. Otherwise, they wouldn't be funding so generously your mission. So I think it's really important for board members to understand that we have a whole group of people who are our stakeholders, who are our partners, who care about us. We're not in a silo trying to figure out how to survive on our own. Our donors are a huge organizational asset. And I want to go down very clearly here today saying it is very important to be in front of your donors, tell them what's going on now. And it's almost always going to be appropriate. You need to honestly ask for what you need because the work continues. So that's an annual fund ask. It's an emergency funding ask, but the work continues is a powerful phrase. And if I'm a lover of frogs and swamps and I want to help the land trust, and I've been talking to the land trust a long time about a huge estate gift, not this current environment is not going to change that. My passion is still there as a donor. My passion goes back when I was a little girl. So the passion is not going to go away. The commitment is not going to go away. And the fact that I like this organization and trust your organization, that's not going to go away either. We have to get our board members to understand that.
Right. And we need to be able to communicate that to those donors as to what do we need that is different than what you may have talked about when you gave them a proposal 6 weeks or 8 weeks ago. It is a different world and there are different needs. I think especially those organizations that have lost their revenue streams, like those arts organizations and some of the others, it's important to talk to your donors about, here's the situation. I think about going on an airplane and we're always told, put your own mask on before you help others. And I think in this situation, we have to put our organizational mask on to make sure that we've got the oxygen that our organization is going to survive this. And then we'll be able to help others. Either during this time of the virus, our organizations will be able to reach out and help people, or we're going to be needed afterwards. I do a lot of work in the arts, and I think about how important the arts are going to be to our spirit when we are no longer in our houses and we can go back and join together. We want those arts organizations there to help heal our spirit as well as our health.
And, when I was first starting out in fundraising, I was sort of afraid of my key donors. Like they were way up high on a hill and I was down here. And I didn't really know how to have a friendly relationship with them. And so I recommend that if you've got this proposal out in front of this for a transformational gift and other major things are happening at your organization right now, hopefully you have a relationship with this individual or funder that you can get in touch with them and say, how are you doing? Things are really wild now, aren't they? We wanted to touch base with you. We hope you and your family are okay and your team are all okay. And would you like to know what's going on here? I mean, that's the conversation to have with everybody. And then you remember, one of the key things about asking is you ask for permission. And, we have a situation in which our organization is upended and we know we have this proposal in front of you. Would you like to talk about the proposal in light of what's happening now?
We call it asking to ask. And it's okay to do that with your donors and help develop that relationship. The other thing that came to mind while you were talking, Gail, was this is a great way to engage your volunteers. We as fundraisers can develop great relationships with our donors, but most of the time we can't be their peers. But we have friends who are friends of the organizations who are their peers. And it's a great time to continue to engage them. And you can have a video conference with 3 people. And so maybe it's you and a board member and the donor. And maybe the board member and the donor know each other well, and you can be a part of that relationship. They can testify for the importance of your organization in their lives, and then they can turn to you for more details about what's going on and then about what's going on in your campaign.
Love it. And I want to talk a little bit about the topic of this slide, that you probably got nervous leadership volunteers and particularly nervous board members. And I've touched on this earlier, that board members may not be familiar with capital campaign strategy or the pace and the timing. And also I want to caution you that it could be that, when you look at your board from a group process standpoint, there may be a small group who are beginning to who are not on the same page as everybody else. They may be disruptive. They may be afraid. They may be talking among each other. They may derail everything. So this is a time, staff and leaders who are listening to this presentation, this is a time for you to assume a leadership role. You can smile, but you still need to come forward with a plan that's positive, proactive, that is well-paced. Maybe you're going to just let everything ride for maybe 2 months, and then we're going to reconvene because our organization's vision and its exciting plan for the future is not going to go away. So
that's a matter of getting your homework done. You need, like we said earlier, know where you're going or where you plan to go, but then get your team together, do an assessment of where you are right now so you can communicate that.
Yeah, and this is a role for consultant, because I've walked into a couple of organizations that wanted to mount a capital campaign, and their board was not all on the same page about the project, which could be happening now in a different context. And I spent a lot of time with the board members trying to get everyone to agree and buy in. And I did have another campaign that was actually a Ronald McDonald House, in which there was a subset of the board that absolutely was working against this project from day one. So be aware of the politics that are going on in your organization that could affect decisions related to the campaign, and do your best to be honest and transparent with people, and kind and compassionate, and just try to get everything on the table. What do you think, Brian? That's where
I think it's important for people to also educate yourself on the situation. Now, this is a unique situation. It's a healthcare and an economic situation, but there are some patterns here. I've been around the fundraising world, so I've gone through a couple recessions. And so I can go all the way back to 87, and I can look at what happened in 2001, and we can look at the dot-coms, and we can look at 2008. And when you're in the middle of the crisis, it's difficult to make a decision. But you can look back at some of those patterns, and fundraising didn't dip very much. And the organizations that kept the pace, that stayed the course through that process, came out better, much better on the other side of it. And so educate yourself as to some of that background too. It helps in the communication.
Yeah, we've been through a crisis every 10 years, haven't we, Brian? Because there was recession, and there was the dot-com bubble around the year 2000. So we've seen it all.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian, I think this is your slide, the silent phase.
Well, the next thing is we've gone through the planning stages, we've gone through the feasibility study, we've made the decision to move forward, and now we're in what we call the silent phase. My clients often ask, why is it silent when it's not really silent? No, it's silent because of who you're talking to. You're having quiet conversation with major gift donors, but you're also, you are communicating to the public, just not in the way you will when you get to the public phase. So when it gets to this phase, it kind of depends upon where you were when this particular crisis hit. As we were going down the highway, the train goes by, you have to do some assessment and figure out what you're going to do. Stay optimistic, but you have to be realistic. And you may have been just ready to do an ask, and it may be time to do some more relationship building instead of doing that. But it all gets back to communicating to those major gift donors. How are you doing? Here's how we're doing. And hopefully the donor will respond with some sort of, how can I help? And be ready to answer that question. And you're going to have to do some homework before that to know how to answer that question. And the timing will change as we go through this period of time.
If I were in the silent phase of a campaign, I would have my prospect list, and I would be double checking back with them ever so gently, and finding out about the timing or assessing the timing. Not necessarily say out loud, what are you thinking about the timing, but making an assessment of where they are in their finances and their family and everything to get a better idea of what the timing might be of these lead gifts. And then I would reorganize my campaign plan. So you want to be in front of these key people, just chatting and seeing how they are. I have one person who wrote me, she's in our major gift coaching program, and she said, gosh, I've decided to take a positive, proactive attitude, and I've had so much fun being in touch virtually with my major donors and asking them how they are, and if they need anything, can I help them? So what a lovely thing.
That's exactly right. I have a client who works in it's a large multi-dimensional organization that works with older people. They have everything from independent living to nursing homes to memory care and all sorts of things. But one of the things that he's doing is these people are in their rooms. They can't come out because of the virus, but they have to get groceries. And so one of the things he's done is the groceries come into the center. He takes the groceries from there up and puts it in front of their door, then goes back to his office and gives them a call. And it's an interesting way to continue the conversations in this environment, because people are scared. I think especially those people who are alone and independent, they want to hear your voice. And so you need to be ready to meet them where they're at.
Mm-hmm. And I want to mention another activity that if you're in a campaign planning mode or in the silent phase, is really analyzing your donor base and your donor prospect pool. I've had too many clients come to me with their wealth screening information and go, what do we do with this? And so one of the things that we teach is a discovery and qualification boot camp. And it's how to manage your portfolio and value your portfolio of donors. This kind of activity is office work. A lot of it can be. And thinking through your prospects one by one in terms of their capacity, in terms of their interest, in terms of what their donor story, in terms of what does their philanthropy look like, what is what is going on with them individually. It's a deep and thorough process we go through in order to deeply understand where our prospects are going to be so that we can reach out to them and meet them where they are. And I see we have some questions. Alice?
Yes, we do. I think the most popular one at the moment is any tips or cautions about getting the meeting calls right now? And that question's from Esther.
Ooh, well, you can't go see them face to face, can you? I'm a donor to St. Mary's School, my girls' school where I went, and I got the nicest phone call from them. I'm an annual fund donor. I'm a campaign donor. The nicest phone call, just really sweet phone message. We just wanted to check in and thank you again for your support. They didn't ask me for a meeting, but they sent a cheerful and warm and fuzzy touch that made me go, oh, I love St. Mary's, and I love all those girls. So
one of the interesting things about right now, too, is that people are home. If you have a number, we're all used to not being able to get in touch with anybody. My clients are discovering that people are actually picking up the phone and they actually want to talk. So not a cold call. I don't want to talk about that. But if you really care about your donors, it's that first question of, hey, just calling up to see how you're doing. And then just let them talk. And that may be the end of the conversation. But the relationship may go further in that conversation.
You're going in and out, Brian.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my audio or yours. Any more questions, Alice?
Yeah, how about this one? How do you navigate the challenges of having a board or executive leadership who wants to proceed with a campaign and fundraising in general as though nothing has changed, no coronavirus, and refuses to update messaging and be transparent?
Oh my goodness. Because those are the best practices for now is to be transparent, update your messaging, acknowledge the environment. If you've got a hard-headed group of leaders, there's got to be an opinion leader somewhere in there that's really bullheaded on this. It would be nice to try to do your psychology about group process and see who is really the power person who's forwarding this notion. I'll tell you something else. Once I did the ballet in Raleigh was thinking about a capital campaign. I'm in North Carolina. And they brought in 3 consultants. I think they brought a consultant, a donor, and executives from another organization, and had a panel discussion in front of the board about capital campaigns. And so maybe if you could get a donor, if you could engage, let's do some more learning about a campaign, or let's hear from some of our donors. If you have feedback from a donor that says it's going to be tone deaf to go forward right now, that might be helpful. But I will say it is tone deaf to go forward right now with no new messaging. It is completely odd and it's weird. And if you go forward right now, your donors are going to say, what are you talking about? This is off base.
I always think about the golden rule, and do unto your donors as you would want it done to you. Yeah. And if there's a way to get your board members in a mind frame of what would you think if you got this sort of solicitation, like,
good point,
we're moving forward without acknowledging the situation we're in, it just wouldn't fly. I had one client who had unfortunately, a direct mail piece that had been put together weeks before it went out, and it hit right at about the same time that we were all starting to move into our houses and everything else. It didn't acknowledge the crisis, and it kind of fell flat because the messaging was so far off from what the reality is that we're all facing. And we just have to be transparent and real with our donors, and otherwise it just won't work. And I sympathize with your situation, but you've got to work directly with your board to change their attitude.
Yeah, I'm sorry for you, because that's a tough call if you've got both your campaign committee and your leadership and your board saying we're not changing our messaging. Maybe they're so into this vision that maybe you can make a case that the vision is more powerful than the immediate circumstances, and we're looking at the long run. Maybe that's their thinking. Don't know. Well, Brian, shall we
questions,
move on?
Alex? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, let me give you one more before you move on, which is, as many smaller organizations do, my organization depends heavily on grants. We have a database of about 6,000 contacts. Should we continue to write grants? Should we explore shifting towards individual donors? What's your insight considering our current global reality?
Well, if you've got grants and you've got foundation funders, the foundation community is really having deep and broad conversations about loosening their purse strings, loosening their grant restrictions, making unrestricted grants to help their nonprofit partners. And they've all signed these pledges to loosen up. I would absolutely first go to my foundation funders, because they're in a different position than your individual donors are, I think. They think about philanthropy all day long, and they think about how they can make a difference in the world, and you are a partner to their work. So I would start there. And if you don't have a large individual donor base, this is not a great time to be getting new donors, I think.
Well, and the grant world is moving very, very fast right now. And there are some very good opportunities, and you've got to stay on top of it. You know, I see some things on Facebook or people saying, boy, I'm bored. I don't know what to do right now. And I think for those of us who are fundraisers, if you are bored, you're not doing your work, because there is so much to do and there's so many opportunities, and grants are one of them. I had a client who had an opportunity. It was a chemical dependency organization, and they were invited to put in for a special matching grant, and the money was used within 24 hours. Now, luckily, the granting organization has got some more funding, and they're going back to do that. But you can't stop or slow down as far as grants are, and you have to be very diligent as to what's going on as those foundations are trying to help you as a nonprofit organization with their funding. I mean, they realize, many of them realize the role that they're playing, and they realize that they've got to do some things to make sure that we all get through this as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, let us move forward. We only have a couple more slides to go, but I do want to mention the whole notion of the public kickoff. And first of all, I want to remind you, what is the function of the public kickoff? It is the function of this kickoff. The objective is to really give you a boost after you have already raised a large chunk of your money. You may have hopefully you've closed all your lead gifts, and the public phase is the opportunity for the balloons and the marching bands and the hoo-ha, and so excited. It's the PR effort. And also you bring in all your donors and all your prospects and you celebrate. Great time to do that well into the campaign when people are a little bit worn out. So yes, I would delay the timing. I absolutely would delay the timing, because if I want to create a PR event for everybody to feel good, I'm going to wait until people can gather, because I do think it's very important to bring people together around this. What do you think, Brian?
Well, we've got an interesting question from Emily that I think it might. And her question is that for this public kickoff, their organization kicked off a major campaign in late January. So they've kicked it off. And so what she's saying is there's no going back now. What should we do to move forward and meet our lofty goals? What are your thoughts in Emily's situation where they've done the public kickoff? Now what?
You know, I think it's a timing issue. You want to keep the momentum going, but you could continue a steady stream of cheerful communications from your organization about the work continues, and we're so excited about our campaign. And just as long as you're not tone deaf, you have to acknowledge the current economic situation and health situation, because this is a crisis unlike anything that people have ever experienced in their lives. How about you, Brian?
The other thing is there may be opportunity in this. If you are through your silent phase, you've talked to your major gifts, you've got that support. Many of your smaller donors are going to be those people who have been annual donors. And if you've done the assessment as to what do we need inside our organization for the next 30, 60, 90 days, talk to them about that. There may be opportunities to maybe swing the direction a little bit so that you get through your most immediate needs and then come back to the campaign a little bit later. But I think there's going to be times when you need to hold, and then there's going to be times where you need to be very creative as to how do we make the most of the situation we are in this moment in our campaign.
Yeah, I think the words creativity are going to be hallmarks, and innovation. I was reading something that said whenever there's a huge disruption in life or the way we do business or the way we do fundraising, you're going to see creativity and innovation. And I'm already seeing the most charming and interesting videos and appeals and new ways to communicate with me as a donor. And this has just happened in 2 weeks. People are adapting quickly. And I think it's very exciting because of all the new technologies that we're finally learning how to use.
And use them quickly. I mean, we all have a video studio inside of our phones. And I have a group that is doing regular videos. They're not fancy. Somebody takes an iPhone and they hold it in front of the CEO, and the CEO says, here's what's going on this week. Here's the situation. And the message is a little different for those campaign insiders. It's a little different for the public. It's a little different for the large and small donors, but it's easy to do. And the more communication you can get out there, the stronger you're building that relationship with those donors.
Mm-hmm. Well, what if you're in the public phase of your campaign, like our friend was who's just had the grand gala kickoff? There's always the issue that you run out of donor prospects. And that's why you need to be doing the deep analysis of your donor pool well in advance of the campaign. And you should know as the campaign progresses, here's my prospect list. This is my potential donor pool. How are people falling? What is the estimated timing and high and low gift that might come in from the rest of the group? That's why Brian and I very much believe in a working goal. You don't announce your campaign goal until you're ready to go public, because it's a working goal, and you don't. And the purpose of announcing a hard goal at kickoff is that you know exactly where the money is that's going to come in for the rest of the campaign. Never announce a goal that you don't know that you can meet, right?
Right, exactly. Because what we're doing in this public phase is we've gone through the strategy phase, we've gone through the major gift phase, we've kicked off the campaign, and now we've got this public bandwagon effect. We're trying to bring other people along and get them excited with all of the work that we're going to do and with the money that we've already raised. But it really depends upon where you're at. I have a client who just wrapped up a campaign last week. And the week before, they were so close. And they were like, how are we going to get, and it wasn't a lot. I mean, I think it was about $50,000 that they needed to wrap up this $5 million campaign. Well, don't forget the people who supported you early on in the campaign. Some of those major gift donors who have made some of those first gifts may already have their pledges paid off. Go back and talk to them. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. They went back at the very end of the public phase and went back to some of those very first people who are now very excited about the fact that the campaign has gone so well and they're so close to their goal, and they gave them the money that they needed to get over the top.
Mm-hmm. And so this is our last of our 10 challenges. How do you handle your campaign wrap up and next steps? 2 important points here. I won't belabor them, but you probably have identified prospects during the course of your campaign who did not give at their highest level or what you thought they might be able to give. These are the people who are going to carry you forward, and you continue your major gift, major donor engagement with the newly identified prospects to go ahead and close. They're excited now. They're involved with your organization. They're new. So you've got some work to do. And the first point here, too, is your game plan for your campaign donors. Don't walk away from your campaign donors. I've seen way too many organizations who got the money and ran, and they did not maintain those relationships. You have an obligation, I think an ethical obligation, to stay in touch with your campaign donors over the long run, and let them know what the impact was of their gift.
I've been in this business long enough. I had 2 campaigns that I did years ago, almost 30 years ago now. They were right after each other. One of the organizations made the best of that. They've kept up those long-term relationships that they built in that very first campaign, and they are doing fantastic. The other group did what a lot of people do after a campaign, and they went, I'm so tired. I'm going to stop for a while. And then they never, ever got back up to speed again. And now, after all of these years, I can look at those 2 organizations, and those decisions about did you keep up those campaign relationships made the difference in the kind of organizations that those organizations are now.
Exactly right. That lays the groundwork for your next big effort. So quick poll. We want to end on time here and let AFP ICON move forward rapidly, but we'd love to know what your next steps are for your campaign. What are you thinking that's going to happen? Are you going to just put everything on hold? Are you going to stop? Are you going to go forward? We'd love to hear from you. And while we're hearing from people, Brian and I we want to make a gift to you. We're happy to get on the phone with you or Zoom and have a free strategy call. So you have our Twitter handle, you have our personal email addresses. This comes to my inbox. It's not my newsletter. So
maybe go to that next slide, Gail. That's on there. They can figure out the poll. Go to the next slide. I think our information is on there. You can see Gail's email address, and our Twitter handles are there, and we'd be happy to help. Connect with us. We'll connect back with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not going backwards. The slide is not going backwards for some reason to there we go. Thank you. So what are we hearing, Alice?
So right now we have 44% are full steam ahead. But the next chunk is 30%-ish at slow down.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I think that's great.
Yeah, full steam ahead may be in the planning, in the thinking, in the analysis, maybe not so much in the asking.
Well, I think if you listen to some of the things we said, full steam ahead in this environment means great communication with your donors. Yeah, thinking clearly, doing assessment, being strategic, calling up your donors, finding out how they're doing, but then telling them what you're doing and building those relationships. There's always time, and there's always a place to build relationships. And I think this current crisis is exactly what we should be doing now.
And I just want to give you my takeaway on all of this is that you're playing for the long run, and you look at the big picture, and you are calm, you're a leader, and you have a plan. You're just changing your timetable.
That's right. Take a deep breath. Best practices still work. And we'll be there to help, as will your other consultants. And let me put a plug in for AFP. The amount of resources that AFP has available to you is wonderful. Get on the AFP website and become involved in AFP, because they can be your partner in all of this. And there's a lot of experience and a lot of materials that AFP can provide you to help you through the process.
Thank you so much. We loved chatting with you today.
Thank you so much. Thanks to AFP. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Don't forget the AFP Foundation, and get your gift in this weekend, and Blackbaud will match your gift to Be the Cause, or if you're in Canada, it will match the gift to the Every Member campaign. So thanks again. It was great to be with you. And Gail, it's been wonderful working with you. I'm glad we had this opportunity.
Been great, Brian. You know, when I found out he was an accomplished stage actor and musician, I thought, oh my gosh, I want to be sharing a stage, and he's twice as big as I am. So I think we've had
Brian, I have to say that I may have set you up, because there's a lot of requests on the app for you to sing.
Oh, is that right? Well, I see that we're just about out of time, and
Uh-oh. Well, thank you to you both. We really do appreciate your expertise during AFP ICON, and it was a great session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice.
Thank you very much, Alice. Thanks for your work.
And of course, thank you to everyone's questions that you submitted, as well as, a shout out to all of your furry colleagues. And also thank you to Allison Marino for suggesting new lyrics to Do You Hear the People Sing? And maybe we'll forward those to Brian and see if we can get him to record it later.